When the explosion started at the end of last May, the people of the southern Philippine city of Marawi were running errands for Ramadan when suddenly hundreds of men filled the streets, dressed all in black, waving black flags, declaring they were seizing the city in the name of ISIS. Within a few days, they had taken downtown Marawi and dug in, forcing the military to blast them out, and by the time it was over, hundreds of thousands were homeless, and Marawi had been destroyed in Asia's longest urban battle since World War II. In December of last year, I went to Marawi for Mother Jones magazine to cover the aftermath of the ISIS rebellion. The war for Marawi had taken place at roughly the same time that the US-led coalition was destroying ISIS territory in Iraq and Syria, and as fighting began, leaders in Southeast Asia worried that an ISIS-free state in the Philippines could become a base for militants to attack their own countries. Some even worried that ISIS fighters chased out of their Iraq-Syria border would come to the southern Philippines. But the ISIS that seized Marawi didn't seem like the ISIS I'd been reading about. I saw graffiti on the walls that said, "We heart ISIS," or ISIS with the eyes having little hearts. The more I talked to people around town, the more people told me that these ISIS fighters were youth from local families. One refugee told me of being accosted in the market the day of the attacks by teenagers in black, another of kids too little to drag their own rifles. This tells us something fundamental about the nature of ISIS, or ISIS, especially now that Mosul has fallen. Since ISIS seized its territory in Syria and Iraq, local militant groups all over the world, groups like Boko Haram, have taken up the black flag. But though these groups call themselves ISIS, it's not clear that this means much more than the embrace of a certain shared style or a shared aesthetic, the beheading video, the captives in the orange jumpsuits, the black flag, the black uniforms. What seems to have happened in the Philippines was that a local insurgency with local concerns and local grievances use ISIS as a sort of ready-made template for rebellion. Now, President Rodrigo Duterte is pushing for a permanent peace treaty in the South, arguing that if there isn't a lasting treaty, the war in the southern Philippines is never going to end. Plans are underway to rebuild Marawi as a progressive Islamic city along the lines of Dubai or Qatar. But meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of refugees are waiting for homes that may never be rebuilt. Local government officials worry that if the rebuilding isn't done well and speedily, they're going to have a huge radicalized population on their hands. Meanwhile, the ISIS fighters who escaped the city, who number, it's thought, around 200, are spreading throughout the countryside, recruiting. As of January, there were reports of them reaching out to other youth in small towns with bounty money and the promise of weapons. The Philippine government might find, as the US did, that it's a far different thing to capture ISIS territory or to kill self-professed ISIS members than it is to kill an ideology. The bloody utopian universalism of the caliphate may be like the revolutionary ideas that came out of, say, Moscow, 1917, or Paris, 1792, something that transcends the place where it was created and inspires a whole host of rebels around the world. In the end, the black flag may be less of a trademark and more like a symbol. That is, something like the Confederate battle flag, or the swastika, or the Red Star. In places of historic conflict or perennial despair, it waits for someone new to pick it up.